They asked to a person of wisdom, what is poison? It could be anything that is beyond our needs. Wealth, hunger, ego, greed, laziness, love, ambition, anger, or anything. Then they asked, what is fear? Not accepting the unknown. When we do, it turns into a journey. What is jealousy? It is not accepting the goodness in others. When we do, it turns into inspiration. About rage. Again, not accepting the things that are out of our control. If we do, they become lessons to learn from. What is anger? Anger is not accepting people, especially in our lives, as they are, the way they are. When we accept them into our life without any condition or conditions, the anger will become love. There are many, many more examples. Pretty much everything, especially when it comes to our emotions and about our feelings. All these emotions and the feelings that come about from them are on the same plane. As humans, we carry these feelings for something or for some person, and they can move from one end of the spectrum to totally the opposite end. It's all about understanding our feelings. As the beautiful examples from the person of wisdom, as difficult, as impossible as they might seem, it's all about our intention. If we set our intention, if we change our intention, the feelings will and can change from extreme negative to positive. Because as those feelings come and go, resentment stays. And resentment is our red pill. It is corrosive. It's pure venom. So you might say, so what? I can handle it. It's in my control. We think so, but is it in our control? Let's say you're on the phone and a friend gives you some news. Suddenly, you feel this disturbing sensation in your body. And as you're talking, a half a minute later, you realize that you've worked up a sweat. If the venom, if that poison is in our control, if it is in your control, what is making you sweat? That sweat staining the shirt that you just put on, You were just about to go to work, newly ironed, washed and ironed, crispy shirt, and it's getting this stain around the neck. You gotta loosen that tie that you worked on for 5 minutes to make it perfect. Or your makeup gets runny, loses its perfect lines. Or we could hear some bad news on TV, and we start trembling. Or as they used to say back in the day, start shaking in our boots. So if we think we are in control, we run our mind. We think we're in control of it. Then what are these reactions that are happening out of our control? Who is in charge here? Obviously, the mind is affecting our body. It's affecting what hormones are being secreted. And again, if we think we have control over our body, if we think we can have these venomous thoughts about other people, about certain events, and think that we can think all we want and they're not going to hurt me, they're not going to bother me. Our body produces acidic enzymes to digest the proteins in our stomach. Those enzymes, the acid, is actually pure hydrochloric acid. And that is just to give an idea of what kind of chemicals our body is able to produce. If it's able to produce something as strong as acid that can burn through anything, under stress, it also produces enzymes, chemicals, hormones such as cortisol. And each time we are caught up in these negative thoughts for anything, for people who disturb us, for people who we don't get along with, each time we think about them, and especially if we get involved, emotionally involved in our thoughts, and most of the time we end up doing that. We are releasing chemicals, homemade chemicals, from within our body into our system. And emotions like anger, as we discussed, can come and go. But each time we swallow that small red pill, it's a small one, but it depends how many you're swallowing. Are you increasing your prescribed dosage? As they say, a healthy dosage of fear has to be there to protect us. But each time we do things that we don't want to do, our ego will make a risk return computation very fast, very quickly, in the blink of an eye, and it will tell us, okay, just accept this right now. Go ahead and do it. But you don't want to do it. It's against your being. It's against what you believe in. It's against what you stand for. But because there are benefits to gain, we swallow that one small red pill. And just like the little piggyback, and just like we used to save our money as little kids, and just like the jar that we used to save our pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters as a kid, those little red pills keep building up in there. And before we know it, we have a full jar of resentment. So even if you are able to control your anger, you're able to control your rage. But because of all those little red pills you swallowed, you have a full tank of resentment. And at one point, when our control mechanism can no longer or will not be able to, and at one point there will be an overload where our control mechanism will fail and we will explode. Of course, it is beneficial to have control over our anger. Of course, it is beneficial to have control over our anger or our rage. But the important thing, but the key is to empty, or at least create an exit valve, or create an exit for the resentment. We need some sort of an exit where we can drain the resentment so that it doesn't build up. There are a couple of things we can do. The first one is to build up the character. And yes, it's not easy, but slowly but surely, we need to work on ourselves and build up the character to be able to say no, even if there is a benefit for us, to forego that benefit. And yes, there are not so many opportunities. Maybe. It all depends what your default mode is. If you are in a state of abundance, then it's a different story. If you're in a state of lack, and that's a different story. But either way, yes, opportunities can be limited, and it does take courage and character to be able to say no if it doesn't go with you, if it's against your values, against your being. And in a kind way, we refuse the offer. We don't swallow that red pill. So, step one is to cut down the intake. And that's in your hands. And it's a practice. We start doing it with smaller things. And as we get stronger, we will be able to say no even to bigger things. This could be about anything. It could be about finances. It could be about relationships. It could be anything. The second aid we have is acceptance. When we mature enough to be able to look at things not only from our perspective, but if we try to see what the other side is trying to tell us. As the old saying goes, if we put ourselves in their shoes, maybe we get a break in our understanding and we can accept. And when the door of acceptance opens up, that is the antidote for resentment. So let us juggle these two. First, no matter what the benefit is, try to say no. And secondly, let us try to see what the other side is trying to tell us, and slowly cultivate the notion of acceptance within ourselves. These tools, these aids, or these skills will come in handy in all parts of our life, practically everywhere, in any situation. Our ego is the hard one. The ego is the challenge. It's always going to tell you, it is always going to push you to seek the benefit. Or it's going to warn you that these people are hurting you and you need to react. And we do need our ego's protection. But it's not the only thing we have. We have two hands. So let's take a note of what our ego is telling us, but then pause. Let's press pause. Let's not react or act upon just what our ego is telling us. Let's pass the ball. Let's be a team player and pass the ball to our heart. And let's see what our heart is telling us. And then, just like a scale, let us put the information from our ego on one side of the scale, and what our heart is telling us on the other side of the scale. And let's wait and produce a response. get an answer within us first before we blurt it outside. Whatever it may be, let's use that scale. It's a good one. And it will make it easier with us and with everybody else.